It's California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. We're in Sacramento today, and we are joined by Senator George Runner. He is a member of the California Board of Equalization. And sir, I want to speak with you about the budget.
Hey.
The governor has issued his proposal, his January proposal. What's your sense? You're a budget wonk.
Yeah, it's January budget time in Sacramento.
Exactly.
You know, clearly there's a lot of things that are very different than just a few years ago. The state has additional revenue, and in fact, if there's been a criticism of his budget so far, it's that he has underestimated the revenue.
Right.
Which is pretty typical. The governor always likes to underestimate revenue. That way, you don't have to spend the first 4 months of the year talking about how to spend money, and then you deal with that in March or in May when the May revise comes out.
What's interesting about his budget is he demonstrated a commitment to pay down debt. He surprisingly indicated he was willing to let the Prop 30 taxes phase out.
Right.
You know, I'm wondering if he's your favorite Republican governor ever.
First of all, I think it'll be interesting to see how the legislature. Of course, we've already had legislators call for the extension of those, which is interesting because I mean we've got we now have a budget there that's $113 billion.
It is big.
It's a huge budget, and so I don't know how anybody in the straight face would say, oh, we need to continue these taxes. That were temporary. Remember, they were temporary to get us out of that problem of revenue that was down. Well, clearly that's not the case anymore. And those temporary taxes should be able to be phased out easily. Unless you really want to see government get bigger and bigger.
Here's the question, and as a tactician, I ask you this: if the legislature wants to continue the Prop 30 taxes, the governor doesn't. How would it get back on the ballot? I presume there's not going to be a signature drive to get it back on the ballot, although there could be.
There could be, and that is probably one of the big changes with the last election cycle, where the majority party lost control with their 2/3. So you're right. In order to get that done this time, now you would have to go ahead and get. Excuse me, some of the Republicans to go ahead and vote for extending our tax increase.
But could the governor, well, I guess if they got 2/3, then it would be veto proof.
Yeah, and number one, you're not going to see any Republicans. I don't even think you're going to see all the Democrats in that regard. If anything, I think for more revenue, I think what you're going to see is this idea of expanding the tax base with tax on services.
And let's talk about that. You know, your old friend Bob Hertzberg is back in the California State Senate, and he is kicking around a proposal, which, you know, God bless him, it's not that new. I mean, we've heard this before. And, you know, some Democrats like it, some Republicans like it, and like you said, it spreads out the sales tax. So I believe the goal would be to decrease the sales tax, but have it apply to services. It could be medical services, legal services, accounting services, gardening services, whatever it may be. What's your sense of that, sir?
Well, you know, I'm always concerned when it is people that are going to spread a new tax to somebody and they say we're going to lower it somewhere else. I'm always suspicious as to whether or not it's really going to get lowered or whether or not we're just looking for more revenue. And people have to ask themselves, okay, does this make sense?
But for argument's sake, let's say that the proposal truly is to lower the sales tax and spread it out. I know the numbers are, you know, the devil's in the details, but philosophically, have you taken a position?
Oh, I think philosophically, you can. I mean, again, states are all different. It's not like California, you know, is got the answer and is different than all the other states. There's a lot of states that have different kind of view as to how they deal with sales tax. You know, there are some states, for instance, who don't charge sales tax on the first $500 worth of your clothing that you buy. We don't charge sales tax on food. Other states do. So I mean, there's not a perfect system out there.
But do you like this concept? Are you a fan of the concept of lowering and spreading?
At the end of the day, I'm just concerned. I guess the fact is that the question you have got to ask yourself is why. What are you trying? What is the goal that's trying to be accomplished? If the goal is trying to be accomplished to what? Create a fairer tax system, a broader tax system, or is it really to try to raise more money? And again, we just talked about it. California right now has plenty of money. So the idea of changing that tax system, and how do people feel about that? I mean, a tangible good is a tangible good. When I go out and buy a car, I go out and buy something, I get that, and there's a sales tax out. Now, when I go to my dentist, when I go to my accountant, when I go to Disneyland, when I go to a movie,
Right.
You know, are there some things that I should be able to just do without having to worry about the tax that's going to be charged for that?
And you mentioned buying a car. And we know that in California, we all are driving our cars a lot. We also know that as a result of what's known as cap and trade, there is a new tax. I don't even know what to call it.
Well, again, we need to remind everybody, this is a result of AB 32, actually a bill signed by Governor Schwarzenegger, that created this whole idea of carbon credits, of the carbon credit market, and this idea that says somehow we're going to try to figure out how to control carbon dioxide and create a tax scheme in order to do that.
And so, you know, the voters were given an opportunity to repeal AB 32. They didn't, for better or for worse. And so now we have this system where fuel is now subject
and the
to...
problem, and the problem with the voters being able to repeal it is that it was such a misunderstood issue. I mean, do you think the voters, when they voted against it, or when they had a chance to vote against it, understood that it was going to affect their fuel prices?
You know,
I don't think so, because it was never talked about.
It's hard to know. I mean, there's no doubt that there was a hugely expensive campaign.
Well, there was never talked about in regards to that issue. So now, as of January 1st, because of the responsibility that was given to the California Air Resources Board to set these, they've determined that what they're going to do is they're going to measure and create a tax based upon the tailpipe effect of carbon.
And what's, I guess for those that oppose this tax, you know, the timing is tricky because gas prices are dropping. And we were talking before, like, I was having difficulty figuring out, has it kicked in?
Well, that, you know, we were talking to my office earlier. I said, you know, the public input or impact would have been totally different if all of a sudden this pushed gas prices from you know, $4 to $5 a gallon.
If this was a year ago.
Right. And I think that would be different. But I think you're right. I think what's happened is the effect is being masked now by the lowering of gas prices. So that doesn't mean that now Californians aren't paying more than what others are.
Give me the statistic you
Well, it's interesting.
Me.
Because the only way I think that's a fair way to deal with this, because this is often called a hidden tax, because it's hard to figure out what it is. There's no stamp on the pump. There's nothing that says this is what it is. It's just this figure based upon what the market is. And so the figures that we looked at is, you know, a month ago, Californians were paying about 32 cents a gallon more than the national average for gasoline.
Which is the way it is because
we use different kind of mixes and all the kinds of things that we do, and that's we've always paid more. So we paid about 32 cents more a gallon. Last week we paid about 47 cents more a gallon. Now, if you think about that, that's exactly what it is that the CARB folks said was going to take place. The increase would be between 10 and 15 cents a gallon. So I think they're right. And so as a result of that, right now, Californians are paying about 15, 16 cents a gallon more as a result of this new, I think it's a tax.
So your friends in the legislature on the Republican side had tried to repeal this in the last session.
It was the Democrat that tried to who carried the bill.
Correct me. I believe you. Do you remember who it was?
It was Perea.
Okay, you're right.
It was a Perea bill.
You're right.
The Democrat tried.
Fair enough.
Tried to do it and couldn't get a hearing done.
So where do opponents go from here?
Well, I think again it's going to be talked about more and more. I think people are going to realize this when they look around, they see what's going to be happening, and they see their gas prices are different than others. And the other issue they're going to see, because what's going to happen? Remember, gas prices affect the costs of everything.
They do.
So when you deliver business, when you do business, when you buy stuff in California, it's going to also reflect this tax. That's a result of that. So again, it's one of those issues where it's, once again, more expensive to live in California.
He is Senator George Runner. He is a member of the California Board of Equalization. My name is Brad Pomerance, and you're watching California Edition.